cyberspace astronauts. Are you ready to be entertained with pointless jibber-jabber and senseless small talk? If so, then you have come to the right place. It's the Todd Cook Show, starring Todd Cook, and featuring music by local and national artists. Now, broadcasting from his garage, here is Todd Cook.
Hi, episode 20, the season finale is here. I am here, you are here, you are listening, I am talking. This is the Todd Cook Show. I am Todd Cook, and I am recording live from my, not garage, from my basement. I am now recording live from my basement. I have moved the studio from my garage into my basement, and this will be beneficial in several ways, maybe not as beneficial in others, but overall, having it here in the basement is going to be much better than having it in the garage. One thing that this will allow me to do is to someday soon record a show live, or broadcast a show live, I should say, meaning that people will be able to listen to it as I am recording it. And people, therefore, would be able to call in on the phone and talk about something that I am talking about. Or they could message me over Facebook and be able to ask me questions as I am talking about something. So that's the one big benefit for having the studio here in the garage, because out there, or here in the basement, because out in the garage, I did not have internet access out there, so I could not do it. But here in my basement, and by the way, it's a nice basement. I got this nice stone wall that I'm looking at. We got carpet down here. It's a finished basement. We got a TV and everything. So it's not like going from the garage, which was kind of cold and clammy and dusty, into another cold and clammy and dusty basement. No, not at all. The basement is much nicer than the garage, and so I'm really looking forward to it. The only one of the downsides is I got two kids, and they could come walking down here anytime, which is not that big of a deal. If they get on the microphone and say something, it might actually be good for the show. Might be somewhat entertaining to have the kids here, or my wife, if she comes down to get some laundry, you might hear that going on in the background, the washing machine or the dryer, buzzing or whatever. But hey, this is just a podcast, where I'm not some great band who's trying to make everything sound perfect. I'm just doing a podcast. So if you hear noises in the background, I think it just might add to the character of this show. This is episode 20. I believe I already said that at the introduction. The season finale. That's what I'm calling it anyway. And why am I calling it the season finale? Because I can. I am the host of this show. I am the creator and producer of this show. I can call it whatever I want. And back in the days, back in the old sitcom era, back in the 80s and 90s, it used to be that about 20 episodes made up a season. Nowadays, it's sometimes 6 or 7 or 8 episodes for some of these big, more popular shows now. Maybe not the sitcoms, but some of the dramas that are on TV are definitely, much shorter. A season is much shorter than it used to be back, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I've declared this the finale of season 1 of the Todd Cook Show. But don't worry. Unlike TV, after one season is over and you have to wait, months and months sometimes maybe over a year before the next season starts, that's not the case here on the Todd Cook Show. Season 2 will begin next week. I will not miss 1 week whatsoever of this podcast, and so hopefully you won't miss it either. Next week will be the next episode that I upload will be season 2. Episode 1 of Season 2 of the Todd Cook Show. I've got a good show lined up here for you today. What I'm going to do is kind of like what the old sitcoms used to do at their season finale. They do a little recap of all the other shows. They show clips from different episodes of that season. And I was thinking about doing that here, except for there's one small problem. That takes a lot of work. And me being the host and the producer and engineer of this show, I'm just a little too lazy to do that, to go back and get all the clips from the previous shows. I could very well do it. I have it all saved on my computer. But instead, I'm just going to go over each episode and that I have here and just recap some of the things that I talked about on the Todd Cook Show. And I'm also going to play 2 songs for you today. So this episode might be a little longer than most of the other episodes, or it might end up being shorter. I don't know. We'll see what happens here, but I'm not on any time constraints right here. I'm going to try to hit about a half hour, but we'll see what happens. I don't have episodes. I'm not going to talk about episodes 1, 2, or 3 mainly I could not find. The reason is I couldn't find the notes that I had taken for those shows, and I did not write down the titles of the shows or give a brief description of those shows. So I'm not real sure what I even talked about. I have to go back and I'd have to listen to it all. And mostly on the first show especially, I think I just talked about just what I was going to do with the podcast, and I think pretty close to that on the second show as well, and maybe even the third. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to start with the fourth episode of the Todd Cook Show. But first, here, real quick, I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me, my wife, and my two boys. This happened yesterday. We took the kids to Chick-fil-A here in Wichita, and it's a fast food restaurant, and they got the little play area in the back, that's surrounded by glass in the back for the kids to play in, with the little playground equipment. And there was a sign there that said you had to be 3 years old or under to play there. But then the sign on the front door said you had to be shorter than this to play in there. And it was the shorter than sign, the sign that showed you how short you had to be able to play in there, was like way taller than any 3-year-old would ever be. I mean, you could be 10 years old, I think, it'd be that tall. So it was sending some mixed signals there. But my 2-year-old son obviously was little enough to go in there, and there was other kids in there that were the same age or older than my 6-year-old. So both the 2-year-old and the 6-year-old went in there to play while me and my wife were eating. And every now and then I'd stand up and look, because we're in a booth, to be able to see over the booth into the window. I'd stand up and take a peek to make sure they were both in there and I could see them just fine, and that they weren't causing any trouble or getting in any trouble. And then I'd sit back down and eat. And the plan was to do this, to let them play while me and my wife ate. And then when we're done eating and we got everything, of our food, the trash thrown away, to go get the boys and make them stop playing and come eating so that we could concentrate on helping them with their food. And so this is what we're doing. And like I said, every 60 seconds or so, I'd stand up, make sure I could see them. Most of the time, I didn't even have to stand up. I'd just kind of lean out and look. I could see them in there. And then other times, I'd stand up. But every now and then, if I stood up and I couldn't see them because maybe they were up at the top in one of the little tunnels or something, and I could not see where they were, I had to get up and walk in there, open up the door, and peek around or holler their name, make sure that they were in there. And I kept going back and forth and doing this every couple minutes. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job of it until at some point I'm sitting there eating my food, and my 2-year-old walks by her booth. He must have just somebody must have opened the door for him, and he must have just snuck out. He just had no idea that we were sitting there. He's just wandering around the restaurant. We're sitting there eating. I'm thinking about it's about time for me to go check on him. And before I do, he comes just walking by her booth there. He could have walked around and went outside for all we know. So it felt kind of bad, maybe bad parenting there. But I'm sure anybody out there has kids have experienced something like that at some point in their child's lives. They're hard to keep track of. They can get around pretty quick, but the door was too big. There's no way he opened it himself. So one of the bigger kids must have opened it and allowed him to walk out. And it must have been 30 seconds ago that I saw him in there. So it didn't take very long for him to get his way out. But it's a funny thing, thinking your kid's in there playing and somewhere where he can't get away, and then suddenly see him walking by your booth there as you're eating. And we're like, oh, hey, and trying to pretend like we knew he was there all along. Oh, hey, yeah, come on, let's sit down here. And then we had to go get the other one and have him eat as well. All right, I'm going to take a short break here and play a quick commercial, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to go over the previous episodes, number 4 through episode 19, to just give you a brief recap, and maybe, I don't know what I'll do. We'll find out here shortly, but for now, I'm going to take a short little break. You're listening to the Todd Cook Show. I will be right back. Hi, Todd Cook here. Do you like going out on Friday or Saturday nights for some dessert and live music, but you're not into the bar scene? Because let's face it, when the alcohol starts to flow, those places can get a little loud and a bit rowdy. Sometimes to the point that it becomes difficult for you to enjoy your food or the music. Do you wish that there was a place that had good food, good music, but a less distracting atmosphere? A place that you can enjoy the food and the music, but still get home at a decent hour? Well, that place does exist, and it's right here in Wichita on the corner of Douglas and Hillside, or 110 South Hillside to be exact. It's called The Kiln.
They have live music every Friday and Saturday night, starting at 7 p.m. and ending at 9. The Kiln is a Christian-ran, non-alcoholic establishment that operates solely on donations. And they always have great food and great entertainment. And one of the best parts, you don't need a babysitter. You can bring the kids with you. So for more information, contact Mike through the Facebook page, The Kiln, K-I-L-N, and be sure to check it out yourself this Friday or Saturday night, 110 South Hillside, corner of Douglas and Hillside in Wichita. The Kiln, where they are always glad you came.
Okay, I am back. The Todd Cook Show at gmail.com is my email address. The Todd Cook Show at gmail.com. You can also look me up on Facebook. The Todd Cook Show. Just type in The Todd Cook Show there, and you'll find me on Facebook as well. All right, I'm going to get to it now. Like I said before this break, the old sitcoms back in the 80s and 90s, at least, at the end of every season, they would have a season finale a lot of times where they would just play highlights from different episodes earlier in that season. That's kind of what I'm going to do here, except I'm not going to actually play the episodes. I'm just going to tell you about them, give you a little recap of those episodes of The Todd Cook Show. And I'm going to start with episode number 4. Here on my notes, it says in episode 4, I talked about I told you some stories about being a grocery store employee and how my wife and I will retire rich. And real quickly, being a grocery store employee, I remember this episode. I remember the stories I told, but I did not tell these stories. I used to work at grocery store quite a bit. I got probably close to 10 years of experience working at grocery stores. And there's a couple of jokes I used to do while working at grocery stores. I always thought they were funny, and maybe you guys will too. And it's one of those that most people would just roll their eyes and shake their head at me. But deep down inside, I know that they thought they were funny. And one of the things I used to do at a grocery store is a lot of times I'd walk by the meat department, and I'd look at the Oscar Mayer, the lunch meat that was hanging there, and a really angry, loud voice, I'd point at it and I'd say, "That's a bunch of baloney." See, as I was standing there pointing at the baloney, I'd say, "That's a bunch of baloney," and people would be like, "What's going on? What's your problem?" And I would just keep pointing. That's just a bunch of baloney, and eventually they'd get it, and they'd either laugh a little bit or roll their eyes. Another little thing I used to do at the grocery store. This is a joke that I wrote myself. I actually made this up. I would. Here's how it goes, and you guys tell me if this is not one of the funniest things you've ever heard. What aisle at the grocery store is the nicest aisle to be in? What is the most? What aisle is the most joyful aisle that you could ever be in a grocery store? The answer: the canned vegetable aisle. Why is that? Because that's where they keep all the peace and harmony. Peace and harmony. Peace and harmony. Get it? With a can of peas and some harmony. Now, see, this is really taking me back to my grocery store days. I'm a little embarrassed by that one, as a matter of fact, but I thought it was funny back in the day. So, and then we also I talked about on episode 4 about how my wife and I were going to retire rich, and the reason for that is my son was going to become a Bigfoot hunter, and he still wants to do that now. He'll be 7 years old here in a few more months, and he still wants to grow up to be a Bigfoot hunter. So we're excited about that. I'm sure when he becomes a Bigfoot hunter, he's going to make lots and lots of money for us. See, episode 5, I had my dog in the studio. Some of you will remember this. In episode 5, I had my basset hound, Dozer, in the studio, and I was going to interview him, but every time I stuck the microphone in his face, he would do nothing but snore. So that did not work out too well either. Episode 6 here, it says I had a problem with me versus technology. I can't even remember exactly what that was about. I think I had some trouble with my phone. I told you about that. And I told you about the gig I had playing. My band played for a kindergarten class. And that was a lot of fun as well. It was a little nerve-wracking. Those 6-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-olds can be pretty tough on you sometimes. They're pretty critical of people playing music, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. I remember talking about that, and also about putting my trampoline together. And that trampoline, by the way, is one of the best babysitting items that we've ever had. You go outside, put the kids in there, zip it up, and lock it so they can't unzip it, and you sit down on the patio and just watch them jump, and don't have to worry about chasing them around, don't have to worry about the little one trying to get out the gate or anything. So no matter how fun that trampoline might be for them, for us adults, it's just a great, it's like the world's biggest playpen. We've had a lot of fun with it. Episode 7. This is where we talked about our celebrity sightings. I mentioned just a few moments ago about my son wanting to be a Bigfoot hunter, and the reason for that is there's a show on the Animal Planet that features Bigfoot hunters, and he watches it all the time. And I talked about on this episode 7 about how we had an opportunity to meet those Bigfoot hunter, the 4 people, the 3 guys and the 1 lady on that show. And Johnny, my son, had a big thrill about that. Episode 8, I talked about the Valentine's misconceptions, and I remember this. This is about how there's always this big. Everybody's always talking about how men always wait till the last minute to get flowers for their wives or their girlfriend on Valentine's Day, and how people always say, they're always criticizing men and saying, why do you have to wait till the last minute? And I went through it step by step and explained that this is a ridiculous concept, because you have to wait until the last minute to get flowers, because if you get them any earlier, there's no place to hide them, and the earlier you get them, the sooner they're going to die. So because they're flowers and they're hard to hide and that they will soon die, you have to wait till the last minute. And Mother's Day is coming up, and so we got the same problem with Mother's Day as we do Valentine's Day, but this year I don't have to worry about it at all. My wife has already ordered her own flowers on the internet. So all I got to do is wait for them to show up and sign my name to them, and she seems to be perfectly happy with that. So for Mother's Day, my wife is going to be getting the flowers that she ordered herself. Let's see, the next episode 9 here, I talked about how I don't really like swimming pools because everybody thinks that swimming pools are so refreshing, but to me, all swimming pools do is get me wet. And there's like this weird thing, if you're out in the rain and you get wet, nobody seems to like that. If you're sitting outside and somebody dumps a bucket of water in your head, you get upset. Oh, man, I'm all wet. I need to dry off now. But for some reason, people seem to like swimming pools. I don't really like them all that much at all. And also talked about I remember I played a conversation that I had with my wife at a restaurant. And this is a little bit that we might do again, but now that I got the studio inside, instead of trying to record a conversation out in the field, if you will, out in a restaurant or somewhere, I'll just do it here in the studio sometimes, so the audio quality will be a little bit better, because I remember that was kind of hard to understand some of the stuff that we were saying there. Episode 10 says here, I told a good joke, and I remember that. I remember I told a joke that I heard on the Larry Miller podcast, and I would highly recommend anybody to go to LarryMillerPodcast.com and listen to his show. He's one of the inspirations for what I'm doing here, and so go look him up. And I talked about, what else on that show? Oh, about how ice cream cones are ridiculous, and I still believe that today. Ice cream is a messy, ooey, gooey, icky, drippy, sloppy, sticky mess. You shouldn't put it on the cone and try to eat it off. Put it in a bowl and eat it like a civilized person. I'm going to do one more here, and then I'm going to take a short break. Actually, I'm going to play a song here in just a short minute. Episode 10. Well, that was episode 10. Episode 11, I had my quote, acoustic episode. And I remember this. My computer was getting repaired, so I did not have everything I needed to do a normal episode. So I just picked my guitar up, turned the microphone on, and started doing a show. And I don't know if it was one of my best shows or not, but I'm pretty proud of the fact that even against the odds, when the odds were stacked against me, I was still able to produce something. All right. I'm going to play a song now, and let me explain this song. I'm in a band, and this last week we had a really nice gig here in Wichita. And by nice gig, I mean it was at a bar. The bar was full, and the people there were very enthusiastic about the music that we were playing. So we had a really good time. But at about a half hour before we were done, we had a lady come up and requested a gospel tune. Now, that's not something that happens at these kinds of venues all the time. It's not very often that you sit in a a bar or you're in a bar playing, and somebody comes up and wants to hear a gospel song. Now we'll play anywhere. We played at bars and we play outdoor festivals and we played at churches even. And so we have a lot of gospel tunes that we have at ready. And you know, in case we play at a church, they're ready. We know them. We can play them anytime. But we weren't expecting to get a request for one of these gospel tunes at a bar, but we did. And now, when you're at a church, you never get requests at church, you know, to play a song about drinking whiskey. We got a few of those songs as well. So, but you do occasionally, people at a bar want to hear a gospel song. This isn't the first time it's happened. But she wanted to hear Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and that was one that we happened to know. So we played that. And because of that, it kind of made me think that maybe I should play a nice old gospel tune on today's episode. This is a live version of my favorite band, Bride, doing Amazing Grace. So here's Bride doing a live version of Amazing Grace on the Todd Cook Show.
Sweet the sound. It was that grace that led me away into the promised land. Well, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
That's Bride with Amazing Grace. Of course, everybody recognizes that song. That song is brought to you by B&B Towing. B&B Towing, if you're in the Wichita, Kansas area and you need a tow, you got to call Cheyenne Brown at 316-214-4021. B&B Towing, if you need a tow, if you need a winch out, if you have ran out of gas and need somebody to deliver some fuel to you, or if you got an old clunker that you need to get rid of and you want somebody to even maybe give you a little money for that clunker, call Cheyenne Brown at B&B Towing. 214 or area code 316-214-4021. A 20-year veteran of United States Air Force, Cheyenne Brown, B&B Towing, 316-214-4021. And with that, I'm going to take another short little break here and come back and try to finish giving you the recap of Season 1 of the Todd Cook Show. I am Todd Cook. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. Do you live in the Wichita area? Are you looking for a great place for lunch or dinner? Do you love live acoustic music but don't know where to go? Try the Artichoke Sandwich Bar. It is located on the corner of Broadway and Murdoch in Wichita, and it is a fantastic place to eat and listen to live music. It is located on the corner of Broadway and Murdoch in Wichita, and what goes better with a sandwich than a cold beer? So look up the Artichoke Bar on Facebook today to find out when they are opened and what musical artist is performing next. They just celebrated their 30th year in business, so you know they're doing something right. The Artichoke Sandwich Bar, 811 North Broadway, Wichita, Kansas, where everything is okie dokie artichoke.
The Todd Cook Show at gmail.com is my email address. I'm going to finish doing the recap of Season 1 of the Todd Cook Show now. The last episode I was talking about was episode number 11, I believe. Yeah, the acoustic episode. And one thing I forgot to mention is on that episode, at least according to my notes, that was the episode that I made the big announcement about me and my wife expecting our third child. And I remember that quite well. It was kind of an awkward thing to be in the garage there with my guitar and sing. I sang a song even myself. I didn't have any of my computers. I didn't have any of the music that's usually on my computer. I didn't have it, and so I had to make some stuff up kind of there on the spot. And one of the things I did was just play a song that I wrote myself. But and I announced that we're going to have our third child, and that's still very much the case. I believe it's due late summer, early fall. I'm not sure if the doctors gave us a due date just yet, but we are very much looking forward to that. And one thing I forgot to mention was we don't know if it's going to be a boy or girl or not. And the first two we did not tell anybody until after it was born. We knew. As soon as the doctor told us, we knew, of course, but we did not tell anybody else. And this one, we're trying to decide if we want to tell other people or not. And I think my wife is a little more in favor of telling people, and I was a little more in favor of not telling people, but I'm starting to lean towards telling people now. Why not? So when they get those little baby clothes, they know whether to get blue or pink. And also, we've got to find out some names. So if anybody out there has a good name for boys or girls, send them to me. Send them to my email address, thetoddcookshow@gmail.com, or send it to me via Facebook or something, because we're struggling to try to come up with some names. We're kind of leaning towards sticking with the J, because my sons are both their names start with J, Johnny and Jackson, and so whether it's a girl or a boy, we are I think trying to stick with the J theme. So if you know any good boy names or girl names that start with the letter J, send them to the Todd Cook Show at gmail.com. All right, episode 12 of the Todd Cook Show. I'm going to lower my microphone here. It's a little high. I'm going to try to adjust it without making too much noise. Down just a couple inches here. There we go. That's a little better. That's probably a little noisy, but I'm stretching my back out to try to reach the microphone the way I am sitting in this chair here. I need to get a couple more mic stands. But anyway, episode 12 of the Todd Cook Show, I had a special guest in the studio. First time I ever had anybody in the studio with me, and I know exactly who that special guest was. It was my wife. She came into the studio with me for the first time that day. And we also had our very first phone call. I set it up to where I could take a phone call. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it. I wasn't sure if I had the technology to do it, but I did take a phone call on that first episode 12 of the Todd Cook Show. Was the first time I took a phone call. And a little trivia question: anybody out there remember who it was on the line? If you guessed my son, you are correct. My 6-year-old son called into the show, and I talked to him for a little bit. That was a lot of a thrill. Episode 13. This was the first time I had the music of Dale Thompson on the show, and that song you just heard, Amazing Grace, was his band Bride doing Amazing Grace, but he also has a solo career out there, my favorite artist of all time, so it was a big thrill for me to have him on this show. I got permission from him straight through Facebook, so that was a lot of fun for me to be able to play him, and I will continue to play his songs quite a bit because I like him that much, and his band's got a new album coming out this summer sometime, so you will definitely hear from that as well. And I talked about my dad retiring, that he was going to be retiring soon. Well, he's no longer retiring soon. He has now retired, and he is absolutely enjoying it. His body is healing, and he's enjoying his retirement. And I did a bit called Don't Say It, Sing It. I'm not sure. I don't think that was the first time I did that bit. I think I did that bit maybe the first, second, or third episode. But that's where I tell you a story that might be kind of boring, but I still want to tell it to you. So to spice it up a bit, instead of just telling you the story, I sing the story to you to the beat of, or to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb. And I'm going to continue doing that bit as well as my other bit that I do, Kitchen Sinking. I'm sure those will both make appearances in season 2 of the Todd Cook Show. But I need some new bits. If anybody's got any ideas out there, when we do a live show, I've got a lot of opportunities of different things I can do. But if you got any ideas for new bits there, you can let me know about that as well. Episode 14, that's where we had a lot of snow here in Kansas. And I hope we're done with the snow now. We're in May. This is May, folks. And we actually just had a few snow flurries just a couple days ago. Nothing that stuck here in Wichita, but I believe to the west of us and to the north of us, there was a little bit of accumulation, but I'm hoping we are done with the snow. I also played some heavy metal music by Bride. That was the first time I played Bride. I played Dale Thompson the week before, and then that episode I played some Bride. You know what? I'm going to take another little short break here. We're over the 30-minute mark. I knew I was going to go past 30 minutes, but I'm going to play another song here. This is another song by Bride, and the reason I'm playing 2 Bride songs, this is kind of the best of the Todd Cook Show, if you will, giving you highlights of each episodes, and now I'm going to play my favorite music. I play a lot of local artists and some national artists, but why not play just wherever I want to play today? And so I'm going to play some more Bride for you. I played some a live version of Amazing Grace that they did. Obviously, they did not write Amazing Grace. That song's been around for centuries. But this is another a song that they wrote. This is one from, what album is this from? Show No Mercy is my guess. This is maybe their second or third album. This is old school. This is old school Bride. So here on the Todd Cook Show, I'm going to play a song from Show No Mercy. It's called Hell No. That's Bride with Hell No, and I forgot to mention before the song that was a live recording of that song as well. There were Amazing Grace was a live version of that song. I believe they were both recorded at the same show in Germany, I believe. So that's Bride with Hell No on the Todd Cook Show. Getting back to my episode, or I keep saying episode, getting back to my Season 1 recap of the Todd Cook Show down to episode number 15. I talked about how to tip a waitress and how it should not be based on the size of the bill, because it should be based on how much work she has done or he has done. How many people did they serve? That's what it should be based on, not on how big the bill is, because the bill could be really big if there's only one person, but he ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. The bill could be big, and therefore the waitress would get a big tip. But if two people come in and they order just hors d'oeuvres or appetizers, their bill will not be as big, and so this waitress has done twice the amount of work but got half the tip. So it should not be based on the size of the bill. It should be based on how much work and how good the service was. I also talked about the old issue that's been around for years about men leaving the seat up on the toilet. And I resolved this issue. There was two issues, actually, I talked about. Men leaving the seat up and the toilet paper being on the toilet paper roll backwards. I resolved two of the biggest controversial issues in mankind's history. I resolved both of them on episode 15 of the Todd Cook Show. And briefly, let me go over it again in case you missed it. In case you missed this mind-numbing, mind-blowing idea that I came up with myself, nobody else. It was like a revelation to me, and it should be a revelation to you. Men should not be responsible for leaving the toilet seat down or putting it back down for the ladies. We should not be responsible for preparing the toilet for you, okay? And the way that I summarized it on that show, and I'll summarize it again here, you sitting down where there is no toilet seat and blaming on somebody who was in there before you would be like if I peed on the toilet seat and blamed it on the person who left the seat down before I was in there. When you go into the restroom, be prepared to do whatever you need to the toilet before you do what you need to do, if that makes sense, okay? You can't blame it on the man because you about fell into the toilet. And then with the toilet paper being on the toilet, the roll backwards, there's no such thing. Never once have I had any issue with being in the restroom and reaching over to get the toilet paper and not being able to figure out how to get it off the roll. There's no such thing as putting it on backwards or putting it on wrong. You can put it on any way you want to. So those are two huge issues that I resolved both on episode 15 of the Todd Cook Show. And if you want to hear more about that, you can go back to youtube.com/The Todd Cook Show, or you can go to iTunes as well and download episode 15 of the Todd Cook Show. One of my favorite episodes of all time, by the way, because I resolved those two issues. And if you want to hear how I did it in a more full way, go to episode 15 and listen to the entire episode. Episode 16, my son was learning bad words and making nice with the ladies. And I talked about that. The bad words that he learned were doofus and stupid. And I had to let him know that doofus and stupid's not all that bad of words at all. And I told him one of the reasons we know that's not a bad word is if he called my dog a doofus or if he called my dog stupid, I wouldn't have any issue with that whatsoever. So we went through that. And then he was making nice with the ladies, and this is one of the funny stories that I remember telling. He got a phone number from a girl in his kindergarten class. He said, I got a phone number. I want to go play with this girl. So opened up the phone number. My wife did. Opened up the little piece of paper he had, and the phone number was 15-11. So it was a great attempt to get a girl's phone number, but I think he came up just a little bit short on that one. I also talked about getting old, and I remember that too. I can't remember the specifics of the things I talked about, but one thing I do remember is that I forgot to mention a couple other things about getting old. One of the things that I've done since I've gotten old is grow out a beard. It's not a big, long, bushy beard. It's not like anything like you'd see on the duck. What's that show? The guys that make the duck calls. Duck Dynasty, and nothing like that. I don't have a ZZ Top beard. I got, it'd be like a 2-week growth, and I keep it like that. Why? Because I'm old and I'm lazy. Nothing to do with fashion. It's not necessarily that I like how it looks or anything. I've got a few compliments from it, but it has nothing to do with that. It's just because I'm old and I'm lazy, and going over with a beard trimmer, once a week, and just shaving, above it and below it to keep it looking nice is way easier than shaving my whole face. So the beard, nothing to do with fashion, 100% to do with being lazy and old. Another thing I've done since I've started to feel like I'm getting old is I bought some slip-on shoes. The kind that you just have to step your foot into and you're on your way. And the reason for that, again, nothing to do with fashion. 100%, I'm too old and lazy to bend down and tie my shoes. It's just a lot easier to slip them on. Another thing I've done since I've gotten old is buy these short socks that just come up to your ankles. I used to always buy, the tube socks that come halfway up your calf. Now I just do the short socks. Again, nothing to do with fashion. It's because I'm too old and I'm too lazy. I don't want to bend over and pull that entire tube sock over my calf. That takes too much effort. The short socks are a lot easier. You get to my ankle and I just stop. And the extra, 6 inches up the calf was just too much work for me. So I switched to the shorter socks. That was episode 16. Let's see here. Episode 17, my most embarrassing moment. You might want to go back and listen to that episode as well. Episode 17, I talked about where I mistakenly, me and a friend, washed our feet in a urinal. We thought it was a sink. How can we mistaken a urinal for a sink? Well, go back to episode 17 of the Todd Cook Show, and you can listen to that story. And I still remember my buddy being less embarrassed about it than I was, and going back and holding his feet up and sticking his feet in people's faces and saying, "Smell my feet. Don't they smell clean? I just washed them in a urinal." All right, episode 18. I talked about going on a date with my wife. I went bowling and how we did the impossible, how we did the most difficult challenge that people face, a challenge that people would say is impossible. Me and my wife did it, and that was we sang karaoke being totally sober. If you want to hear that story, that's episode 18 of the Todd Cook Show. And my wife gave a recipe on that episode too. And my sister in Kentucky, I believe, has already tried that recipe. I did not yet hear from her if she liked it or not. But if you want to hear a recipe for tater tot casserole, you can't call them potato tots. That's just silly. They're tater tot. And tater tot casserole recipe, that is on episode 18 of the Todd Cook Show. And then last episode, it was episode 19. I just talked about how it's hard to get good instructions nowadays. You get a manual, if you're trying to assemble a toy or something, the instructions always seem backwards, and I gave you some solutions, some ways that these people that write those instruction manuals can make it a lot easier for us. And that's really about all I talked about on that show that I remember, and that's all I have on my notes. And so that's all I have for this episode, the final episode of Season 1 of the Todd Cook Show. The season finale is now over. But don't worry, Season 2 will begin next week. Episode 1 of Season 2. I'm sure Season 2 will be better than Season 1, and Season 1 was really good. But that's all for this episode. Season 1 of the Todd Cook Show has come to an end. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you next week. I'll talk. You listen.